Slavery was abolished in 1833, but Liverpool continued to benefit from international trade. By the end of the Second World War, the city's heyday was over. As Britain traded more with Europe, Liverpool found itself on the wrong coast. As businesses failed and unemployment figures soared, the ever-resourceful Scouse villains used the port to import drugs from all four corners of the globe. On the streets and in clubland, drugs created an extremely competitive market. Fistfights in the underworld were soon replaced with gun battles. Liverpool and other cities throughout the mainland would never be the same again. Former martial arts world champion and doorman Gary Sandland witnessed this violent transition. When drugs were introduced to clubland, did the violence change?
It went from being drunken guys who want to shout and scream and be rowdy to tablets, ecstasy and the likes. Then you get into the coke, where people can get aggressive. When tablets and coke became involved, that's when the money side comes involved. And that's when a guy comes to the door and you search him and he's got a bag of pills the size of a bag of crisps. Well, he hasn't fronted them. Some big gang member somewhere has fronted that. So you take them off him, or someone else does, then there's going to be murder. I've been involved in many, many serious incidents. I had 96 fights, 52 pro, 44 amateur. As a kickboxer, I ended up being world heavyweight champion. And I was world heavyweight champion for 7 years with 14 title defences. My very worst fight was in a big club, the biggest club at one time in the area. It's now since been closed down and demolished. On this particular time, there was a door security firm that come looking for somebody. They came into the nightclub that I was running. They came in early looking for the head doorman on the place at the time. 2 doormen at the front, glass doors, fronted them. What are you looking for? We're looking for a couple of guys. Don't know them. Instantly, these 14 or so guys knocked these doormen out and tried to barge through the doors. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I was just inside the doors. I steps out with my best buddy, Steve, and immediately had to start fighting. I was hit immediately with a knuckle duster which damaged the side of my face badly at the time, but I retaliated with a punch which put the guy through the window. My best buddy kicks one of the running up guys who's got a knife in his hand. Luckily for us, we're on about a flight of 5 steps. This guy flies into them and knocks them down like a Skittles. They jump up, pull the knives out, one had a chain, run at us, and we were just fighting for our lives. The owner's son of the club came out, was grabbed hold of, fell on the floor and was stabbed 7 times. The other doorman had the bottle smashed into his face, 35 stitches right down his face, and was unconscious. The other 2 doormen were lying on the floor unconscious and were getting kicked to death virtually and literally. Anyway, we managed to keep fighting and managed to force them back because we had the advantage of the steps, and there was only the 3 of us left fighting because the other 2 doormen had come round and been knocked out with the bottle. The other one had a piece of 3x2 had been smashed in the face. It was carnage. It was horrendous. Several guys stabbed. The owner stabbed 7 times, and eventually they backed off and made a run for it. The story carries on from there because later that evening I was contacted to say, listen, you better get down here to a meeting of different gangs to say, look, if this problem isn't resolved tonight, we're going up, or someone will go up to the hospital and they'll shoot the guy dead in bed, the owner's son. If any names are mentioned, if it goes any further. So there's going to be a bloodbath. Sort it out. We spoke. We decided, yeah, there'll be no witnesses, there'll be no statements, and that was the end of that one. 2 people nearly died. One was blinded, virtually, and 4 or 5 knocked out and trampled on, and serious injuries.
The drugs that fueled the combatants involved in these gangland brawls generally arrived in the UK on small boats. The smugglers themselves were not hardened criminals, at least not in the early days. Boris Boszomenyi, an ex-naval seaman, soon discovered a more lucrative career in drug smuggling.
Basically what was happening is that all these guys got onto the fact that a bit of smoke was worth loads of money. What started off as just a couple of kilos here, a couple of kilos there, started to become tens of kilos, hundreds of kilos, and they're getting money, strong money, but they ain't criminals. And of course, on occasions, these boys are getting caught. They're going to prison where your average gangster looks at them and thinks, these ain't proper criminals, but they've got loads of money. And your average gangster thinks, well, I want a slice of the pie. So what was predominantly like a public schoolboy educated sort of business slowly entered the criminal mentality, the criminal world, where they start to see the actual huge profits in drug. So from the 70s, as the business progressed, it got more in the control by gangsters.
Boszomenyi and fellow public schoolboys like Howard Marks had no criminal background before they became immersed in drug smuggling. But when villains identified their nautical skills and the profits to be made, they were soon recruited.
I was in the Navy when I was young. When I left the Navy, I went to Spain, and because of my skills in the Navy, I was an engineer and diver on submarines. It became obvious to me almost immediately my skills were wanted as a smuggler, and I was approached by several gangs, for want of a better word, in Spain. Do you want to run a bit of hash? And after a little bit of thought, sounded like a bit of fun, sounded like a bit of an adventure. I was looking for an adventure. So I sort of agreed to get involved. My first job was on a boat called Marilyn. We shoot off to Morocco. We're supposed to be picking up an amount of hash. It turned out it was like 300 or 400 kilos. We brought into Spain gear at the time that was worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. So we'd gone from basically nothing to having hundreds of thousands of pounds on the firm in the period of a week. And of course, got the bug for it all. And that was sort of my introduction to smuggling.
Having made one successful voyage, Boszomenyi and his more experienced partner, Ronald Puff Daddy Donati, were soon in demand. Liverpool's notorious international drug smuggler Curtis Warren hired them to smuggle tons of cannabis.
Once we brought the first load into Spain, Ron, the guy behind it all, he had somehow, don't know how, but he'd run into Curtis's lieutenants basically down in Spain somewhere, and these guys agreed to buy every bit of swag that we could get out of Morocco. With the proceeds of the first run, we bought a much bigger boat. So we took some into Spain, then we started to get a bit more ambitious, but it resulted in the customs and excise sort of, they launched this massive undercover operation to capture us called Operation Nebby, and there was basically a big ambush waiting for us in England. We get back to the Isle of Wight, we're sailing up the Solent, and 4 English gunboats come on the boat, light aircraft and helicopter. I don't know what the customs were thinking at the time, but for some reason the customs believed that at that moment in time we threw a load of contraband off the boat, to which we were duly arrested, put on remand in Bristol, where we was held for 15 months.
For a number of years, Boszomenyi shipped drugs between England and Spain. Like all drug dealers, he was eventually caught and imprisoned. However, drug dealers such as Curtis Warren continued to flourish.